This is After Hours with Amy Lawrence.
Hi. My favorite number is 33. My favorite color is orange. I consider myself the resident CBS Sports Radio NASCAR expert. I'm just giving you information about me, in case you're wondering. An American girl. You can't catch up, no matter how hard you try. This week, ridiculous. At this point in the show, I'm not really sure I should be identifying myself.
This is After Hours with Amy Lawrence.
You want to know the definition of tough? I'm a tough girl. Dolly on our Facebook page proposed this. He will donate $2,000 to the charity of my choice if I let him throw a pie in my face. If you guys missed last night's show, we were talking about pies that were thrown in the face of Josh Reddick. And then instead of hiding or cowering, he stood there and he took it, one from each side. Now, I was thinking they were coconut cream pie, banana cream pie. No, probably shaving cream pies, which didn't really dawn on me until I got a text from a friend of mine who was listening to the show. So I don't know that I'd stand in there for the shaving cream pie because that stuff is nasty. So at A-Law Radio, using our nightly hashtag Tough Guys. And then you can also weigh in on our Facebook page. You're already doing that. I've seen a bunch of your posts off to the side. Our phone number is 855-212-4227. We've got NFL training camps starting early next week. How cool is that? The Hall of Fame game comes up on August 7th. 2 weeks from Sunday is our first NFL preseason game. Doesn't that blow your mind? So we thought it'd be a good time to catch up with one of our favorite analysts, player-turned-analyst. Solomon Wilcots is both with CBS Sports as well as NFL Network. And we're just looking forward to this start of the preseason. We get all geeked up. We've nearly made it through the dog days of summer, Solomon. But to ease you in, let's start with a softball question. Thanks for joining us. How is your off season? How have you been enjoying the time away from football?
Well, we spend, for us, it's never really an off season. So I do get to spend some vacation time. I do get to try to get back and have a good, healthy workout regimen. But other than that, it's football 365 days out of the year. We're constantly grinding, and we're putting together our reports on all 32 teams. It's research that can only be done by me. That's just how I get it done. That way, hopefully, I'll know what I'm talking about.
Football has become nearly a year-round sport. There's an event or there's news happening, it seems like, every month, even though it's supposed to be the off-season. How much has that changed, Solomon, from the time that you played in the late 80s, early 90s, or even from 10, 15 years ago?
And Amy, you're right. I think really what we have, and it obviously comes with the explosion of Internet content, it really allows the casual NFL fan, particularly your fantasy NFL fan, who they really are engaged with all the data, with all the information constantly and consistently as they're gearing up for who to put on their teams, who are the most productive players. What it's done, it's raised the bar for how much knowledge the average NFL fan has. And so for many of us who are covering teams and covering the league as a whole, it's really up the ante for us as well. And so we like it. While we do have a higher level of commitment of people who want and need that information, the onus is us to be able to provide the information, but now we just have to provide it at a much higher level.
I'm glad you used the term information because that's definitely something I wanted to ask you, specifically as it relates to concussions and head injuries. It is so much more prevalent and prominent these days in professional sports. And it's not just the NFL. It's the NHL. It's soccer. It's NASCAR even. It's the WWE with a new class action civil lawsuit. So looking back at the point at which you played, again, late 80s, early 90s, how much more information is available to players and teams?
It is. I mean, you can't even compare it to what it was like in the 80s or even the early 90s or even the late 90s. The data, particularly as it pertains to player safety and player health, it's so increased exponentially From now, for instance, during training camp, players are going to be wearing a chip in an undergarment and an under T-shirt, and it really tells the team, okay, throughout training camp, for every single player, and if a player is overheating, if a player is dehydrated, that data is there. It tells when a player is being overworked, when they've reached their capacity, and in many cases, teams are going to actually take players off the field. I've talked with coaches about that, and the coaches are saying, are you telling me I can't? I don't have my middle linebacker to practice today? No, we got to rest him. The computer says he needs rest. Are you kidding me? I could not imagine going back and telling my old high school coach, Leo Brohard, hey, the computer says, Coach, you got to take the day off. Oh, my, it would never fly. But that's where we're at today. The analytical data drives the decision-making as to who's practicing, how much you practice, let alone how games are going to be won or lost.
Well, how do the players feel about it?
You know, players are really much brighter and much smarter and much more intuitive today. Let's take Tom Brady, for instance. Tom Brady says he's going to play till he's 40, and he's right. Tom Brady invests heavily in his overall health. He's well armed to be much better throughout the course of the season. He said that his arm feels better today at 38 than it did at 28 throughout the course of a 16-game season. That's because he has good nutrition, good health, takes much better care of his body because of the knowledge and information that he has at his disposal. But here's just an example of just about every player in the National Football League who expects to play longer because they eat better, they train better. In every way, shape, or form, they're more better prepared to play. And so they're finding that the body can last longer when you take good care of it. And that's where players are at today. They have learned so much more about the science of taking care of themselves, science of training, and how to prolong their careers. And, boy, they're putting that knowledge to good use.
It's After Hours with Amy Lawrence on CBS Sports Radio. We're getting prepped for training camps with Solomon Wilcots, who is a CBS Sports and NFL Network analyst. And you can see him this week on NFL Network's NFL Total Access, 7 o'clock Eastern. So, Solomon, continuing along the same lines with the concussions and the information, how would you rate the job that the league is doing in disseminating this information to its players and to the teams?
You might say that this is the last frontier of some of the data when it comes to physical health and safety as it pertains to players. Cognitive health is that last area that really has sort of come about through all the information that has evolved from the research of CTEs and concussions. And now we understand, and we're now learning that, hey, we knew the body took a tremendous amount of beating, that there's a tremendous toll physically from playing the sport of football and participating in sports in general. But now we're learning that the head is at tremendous risk in football and in contact sports of other kinds. And so now that we have a body of work, in other words, that the research has been taking place for over a decade now, we not only have information based on short-term damage, but what happens over a longer period of time. And so this information is not just now new; it's ever evolving. It continues to grow. But then, how to protect the head, how to take the head out of contact, and that's what you've seen with some of the rule changes that have taken place in the National Football League. The commissioner has pushed this initiative. We have to play differently. And I remember when players fought against it, even some of the announcers would say, hey, you're messing with the game. But I think we understand now that it is for the betterment of the athletes who are participating. And overall, I think it's going to be better for our game as well.
We've got, obviously, a ton of storylines. It's a blank canvas as we get ready to start late July and then on into August with actual preseason games. So you mentioned your research and how you've been very diligent through this offseason. What are some of the storylines that you are most highly anticipating as we get to camps?
there's no doubt for me it is these two quarterbacks taken in the first round. It was a scramble, as you well know, to move up the draft board. And it starts with football being played again in Los Angeles. I think you're going to hear a lot about that because we're anticipating just a tremendous draw for the L.A. Rams as they return to Los Angeles, as they're set to build Stan Kroenke, this epic sports complex that will not only include a stadium, but a state-of-the-art stadium that will be the site of a future Super Bowls moving into the future. And it's just going to be incredible, the excitement to have the NFL back in Los Angeles again, and then have this first overall pick, a quarterback out of Cal, Jared Goff, teaming up with the likes of Todd Gurley and a lot of the talented players on that football team. Aaron Donald could have been the defensive player of the year last year for J.J. Watt winning it for the second consecutive season. So there's a lot of excitement in Los Angeles. That brings a lot of excitement to the National Football League to have a team in the second largest television market. That's going to boost ratings overall for the National Football League. And then with the Philadelphia Eagles, you get Doug Peterson coming back to this team, someone who had been a former quarterback, a former assistant to Andy Reid, bringing back that blueprint that Andy had once built in Philadelphia, and then for them to use their second overall pick on Carson Wentz. We know that Sam Bradford's quarterback for now. Chase Daniels waiting in the wings. How soon will it be Carson Wentz stepping in and assuming that role as quarterback of that football team? We believe it's only a matter of time. We just don't know when. So these are a couple of the stories that we're paying attention to in 2016. And then we're going to look back at Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota, the first two picks of the 2015 draft at the quarterback position, and how fast and how quickly can they bring their teams to relevancy. Because I think the Tennessee Titans had one heck of an offseason through free agency and the draft. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly they can get their teams back on top.
Here we are in our final few days before training camp, Solomon. As you talk to players, as you connect with coaches, what's the attitude and the approach when you know it's going to be a long month and then a long 6 weeks until the season starts?
You know, right now, NFL coaches are just kind of holding their breath. They're biting their nails. What they do not want players to do, as you saw last year on the 4th of July with the unfortunate accident with Jason Pierre-Paul. We see players just we want good, sound, solid decision-making from these players so they can get to training camp in one piece so that they don't derail their opportunities to take the field, whether it's through a suspension or through some kind of freak injury. They want players to get back into the building. Coaches feel much better when they're under the control of the team, under the watchful eye of the team. A lot of free time, as we have seen, is not good for all players. So, to get them back in training camp healthy and whole and, and in good standing with the team. And then let's avoid those early injuries like what we saw with a Kelvin Benjamin last year. One of the first few practices, he was done for the entire season. Those kind of injuries you don't need because it derails the team's chances of winning, even though the Carolina Panthers made it all the way to the Super Bowl. And then when we have these inter-squad scrimmages, the one thing that we want to refrain from is the chaotic fighting and all-out team brawls that we saw last year in training camp. I know this has been a point of emphasis and a point of discussion for all 32 teams. Now we have to see if they can live up to it.
We've nearly made it. We're almost there. Just a few days to go. Very excited about NFL training camps opening up, and the NFL Network will have its training camp coverage starting on Tuesday, July 26th. Solomon Wilcots will be part of it. He's also on CBS Sports as a football analyst. You can find him on Twitter at Solomon's Wisdom. Thank you so much for a couple of minutes. It's great to catch up with you.
Hey, you're great, Amy. Thank you.